Hello and welcome to the very first edition of Architecture for Kids podcast. I'm your host, António Capelão. I'm a trained architect, an architectural educator and founding director of award-winning Architecture for Kids CIC. In this podcast, I'm going to talk to practitioners and creatives that share the same passion as I do, to inspire and to engage children and young people to shape their built environment and the creative industries. The podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the Built Environment Trust, the Thornton Education Trust, and the Welsh School of Architecture, Cardiff University. My guest today is Catherine Ritman Smith, Head of Learning and Engagement at the Young Victoria and Albert Museum, a new museum of design and creativity for children and young people, opening today, the 1st of July 2023. Catherine has led learning programs at major cultural institutions, launching the Creative Careers Academy to support underrepresented talent at Somerset House, and founding Design Venture, an award-winning design and enterprise project for schools at the Design Museum. Catherine has degrees from Cambridge and University College of London, Institute of Education. Governance and advisory roles include supporting London Design and Engineering University Technical College, being a trustee for creative and cultural skills, and being a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Catherine, thank you very much for coming to talk to me today, and I'm very much looking forward to our conversation about the work you do.
Thank you.
So, one of the questions, Catherine, that I've always asked to begin with is, what was your favorite subject at school, and what was the subject that you were good at?
That's a very good question. I kind of liked everything at school, if I'm honest. I was one of those strange children that just had a thirst for learning, and I think that's kind of why I've ended up doing what I do, because every day is a learning day, and it's about a state of mind as much as a subject. But I really, strangely, enjoyed history, because it was a time for critical thinking, and that's something else I really value. But I was really good at English. And so I found that quite frustrating. The thing that you found that you could do well wasn't necessarily the subject that you should pursue as your passion. The other thing I really loved, I loved art and design, and I really loved music as well. And that was my real passion. And as a child, it was one of the things I was kind of known for. And, she's going to go and do music. And actually, as I got older, I realised that the thing you love isn't necessarily the thing you should spend all your time doing. So I ended up kind of spinning out into other spaces as well.
Yes, well, and that was sort of what I was going to ask you, if the things you loved or the things you were good at was actually ended up being something progressing to becoming your career.
Yeah, it's a great question, and a good one for an educator as well. I'd say that I use the things that I'm good at daily. That is, writing and talking. I love doing both, as you will be able to tell as we go through this podcast. But I guess the things that I've kind of studied or worked at have been the things that have been most rewarding. And I found that things that are less intuitive and perhaps require a little bit more contemplation and I guess failing and trying have been the most rewarding. And that's probably been one of the guiding lights in, I guess, the study that I've done and also the career that I've had too.
Did you feel support?
Yeah, it was just trusted. And if I had a problem, I knew I could go to people that would support me. And I worked in creative entrepreneurship for a little while. And somebody I worked with said, nothing will change the pace and path of your life like meeting an incredible person. And I have to say, I've really been privileged to be taught by and to work with people that have just believed in me and have pushed me and given me opportunities to stretch. And I think that's the other thing that kind of keeps you thinking critically, keeps you energized and motivated, is trying something new every day, learning a day, and understanding how to cope when it doesn't go wrong, because you put yourself out there, and that was good enough.
Tell us a little bit more about some of these projects you've been working with and have been working on. And you're now head of learning at the Young V&A.
I went over to Young V&A, and the reason I've gone there is because it felt like a culmination of many of the things that I'm very passionate about. And that was about a radical rethink about how we introduce creativity in cultural spaces to children and young people. And that was both in terms of professional practice. We talk a lot about interdisciplinary working. This was the first time really that I did a proper equal collaboration with curatorial colleagues, design curators, interpretation colleagues in the museum space with my learning team as well. And we worked together to think in a very designerly and audience-focused way. So we were very child-centred in our approach to make the museum. So that was one thing. The other is that the target audience for young V&A is from birth up until the age of 14. So my target audience is an audience that, for the most part, can't visit our museum by themselves. So I automatically then have a conversation with the grown-ups that they come with, whether that's their school teacher, their grandpa, their parent, and their neighbour. And having that dual conversation and thinking about how we both educate children but also support grown-ups to understand and appreciate the value of creative learning, of play-led learning, of creative making and space and engaging in our material culture felt like a very special opportunity, because actually the work I've done in creative careers, the work I've done in connecting architects and schools, all of that stuff kind of, and the same with entrepreneurship actually. It's like culturally, if you go home and your parent doesn't understand what you're talking about, you don't get that support and that trust that we were talking about right at the beginning.
Yes.
So this dual conversation is a very important part of my practice at the moment, to just think whether we've tried so many things over the years, all of us across the sector, it's like, does this make a difference? If actually we can talk to grown-ups and children at the same time in ways that are meaningful for both of them, and find new shared spaces for them to learn. Because a lot of our society is quite compartmentalised now. Kids go over there, grown-ups go over there, and never the twain shall meet. And actually this wonderful building with its fabulous galleries and its invitation to participate is hopefully something that is irresistible to all ages.
And I think, you from your experience, you have quite a lot tools, I suppose, to kind of deal with this new challenge.
Yeah, but I guess it goes back to, I love learning and I'm very curious, and it feels like, there are all the debates in the news at the moment about AI and
Yes.
what impact that's having on creativity. And we talk in the cultural sector and as educators a lot about the issues of our time, about climate change, about inequalities in our society, the pandemic, big fat problems that are quite scary. And there are two things for me. One is we need diverse and divergent thinkers. So the call for creativity in our curriculum and in learning becomes even more of an imperative. And the other is that we all need to keep learning. And I don't know how to get that across in you, Ted, other than doing what we're doing, which is a very gentle way of kind of going, families come, teachers come, children come, you're all welcome. You need to come together because we're the ones that need to keep up with them. And so this is a piece of learning for me in my practice as well, about how we keep our minds open and learn from children about their own curiosity. And a lot of the work we're doing at Young V&A has been shaped by co-design and co-creation. For me, it's thinking differently about who our collaborators are. And often in traditional co-design, you bring in your architects, you go, here's the special architect children, we're very special, but very, very lucky to have them with us. Actually, I kind of scrap some of that and I go, what do you want to learn from the kids? What do the kids want to learn from you? And how do we come together as collaborators? So we're listening to each other and not going, here's someone with all the skills and the knowledge and you can play along and some things will come out of it and I'll take them and make them smart for you, which might have been the kind of our starting point.
Yes.
So over the years, I think, just going back to those, things that people have told me about the products that kids design for the design museum shop, or ideas that are pitched to digital designers at Somerset House, they pull me aside and go, Catherine, those ideas the kids have come up with, they're fantastic. So we've always known that they have fabulous ideas, and it's about us enabling that and thinking about how we collaborate with them more effectively.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think, another thing that is interesting that I'm picking up from, you were talking about the work you're doing at the V&A, is that even though it's a museum for kids, of young people, but it's an intergenerational approach. And that I find it quite fascinating. And I think this, starting with an approach like that for a museum from kids, I think that's quite valid.
You know, there are design solutions in that, aren't there? About, the spaces we know of, bench designs along the South Bank or other places that invite play, but are spaces for all of us.
Yeah.
That's something we need to keep working on. And we're trying to address some of that. We are unequivocally a museum for children and young people. But I think your point about intergenerational is about us coming together to support those children and young people. The other side of that is also about the role that creative people, creative professionals play in the life of the museum and in our educational work. Because we've got an incredible collection at Young V&A, drawing on all of the V&A's and departments, and so representing art and design and performance, and curated for children and young people. And for me, there are very contemporary things made this year, and there are very historic things. I think there's an Egyptian doll in the museum. That's our oldest thing, thousands of years old. So we've got this whole span. How do you make that relevant to kids? Well, firstly, you display them right. And there's our chief curator and our curatorial team have just their brilliant imaginations, and they're great at listening and thinking about children. And so from a design perspective, there are things like there's a space for tiny tots, and the objects are all displayed at their heights. So they're like a metre off the ground, sometimes less than that, so that the little babies can pull themselves up and look at a David Hockney or a pair of incredible fashion boots. So there's that side of the physical. But the other is that, just an example of display, there are loads of examples of that right across the museum, thinking about the museum experience, ways to challenge children's perceptions that it might be boring and not for them because there's a precious thing behind glass. We are a museum and the stuff is behind glass, because if we don't put it behind glass, no one will ever see it again. So that's been a reality we've had to work hard with. Once that stuff is beautifully displayed, and we thought very much about how children learn and look and gain joy from the stories and the things from our collections. The other side of it for me is programme is about creative collaborators. So when I talk about our learning programmes and our offer, on equal footing are the incredible 2,000 objects that we have on display in Young V&A that have been very carefully selected and placed for children and young people to support their learning and spark their curiosity. But alongside that, then there are the designers, the architects, the artists, the performers, who we want to be diverse again and divergent, to come and respond and to model to children how you take an idea, where that idea comes from, and how you turn that into something that's relevant to the place that you're at now. And that is a place where we open up opportunities for future collaboration with children and young people. And it's such a privilege to think that because of our target audience, many children come, it's their first experience of going to a museum, it's their first experience of seeing design, it's their first experience of meeting a designer or an artist. And that feels like a huge privilege and a real responsibility, and a very special thing about Young V&A as well.
Yeah, and also, I think as well, it's going to be another breaking another barrier in the sense that people think about art and say, oh, I have to understand art, and and so on. And I think introducing art at such a young age.
The thing for us, and this has been another fabulous thing about being at Young V&A, because I've just been given permission to play as much as I like, and all the great designers and architects I've ever worked with that have collaborated brilliantly with children have a playful practice in some sense or another. They play with ideas, they play with materials, they open up space to just be, and they're curious as well. They've got a playful eye, they're looking for things all the time, and aren't closed mind about where ideas come from. And at Young V&A, we have 3 permanent galleries. One is called Play, and surprisingly, it's all about the power of play and its importance in child development and education and in creative expression. And we've got exhibits and spaces right across our age range, from birth up until the age of 14, all the different ways we play. And what the gallery is doing is offering an invitation to play, but saying this is a creative act. This isn't just a waste of time, because we have very little time for play in our society, and we have even less time for it in education. It's extraordinary how difficult it is to find space and time to play, because we're like go learn to read. It's actually, you could learn to read by being playful, but we don't have the space and the time or the values that support that. And what the research that underpins young B&A, both contemporary and historic theoretical education, has shown us how important play is and how instinctive it is to children and young people, and actually how vital it is for us as adult creatives as well. And so, you're talking about breaking down barriers. For me, play has been one of the fundamental things, because you can show children different ways to play, but you don't always need to. You just need to give them permission. And so when we're interested in diversifying our audiences and widening out the range of people that feel that a museum or a place of art and design is something that's relevant to them, if you use play as a starting point, actually, you're not having to make a case or use a lot of big words. Actually, you're just going, come and see what happens. And did you know you're being creative there? And I never thought of that before. And it's a social act. So you're already sharing it as well. And that's really exciting as well in our spaces. So play has been quite fundamental to both the integrity of the creative learning experience, but also the inclusion of a very diverse range of learners and that invitation, because it's not, I don't know anything about it, I shouldn't be here. It's much more like, well, this is our expertise as kids. And so sometimes we just need to work on the grown-ups as well. But, that's what we've been doing the last couple of years. We've been out, and the pandemic actually, we talk about creative constraints. That was a creative constraint. It was, an absolute tragedy in our time. And the long tail of that we're still seeing in classrooms and in communities now, with challenges around health and learning and well-being, mental well-being. But it pushed us in a corner where we had to rip up our plans and think again. And we had to work outside in that environment. We had to go where the kids were, and we had to go to places where they felt safe. And so we took little slices of play from our developing galleries and just tested them out with kids in the street, in play streets, in playgrounds, at parks, at festivals, outdoors, in the school grounds. And we learned so much. We had so much fun because we were playing. But it just helped us see again about that levelling out of children as our creative collaborators, and what we see by giving them space and giving them trust and observing them.
Can't wait to go and see. I hope I can get in.
You'll be very welcome. Everyone's welcome. And that's been an interesting thing as well, that we've had such rich conversations with creative communities about the potential. And I've just been, I again learned something new by talking to incredible artists and practitioners in and around East London and beyond about their hunger and interest in connecting with our collections, introducing their practice and exploring and extending it with young audiences. So it's a place for all of us in some way or another, the young and the young at heart.
I was thinking perhaps, we could just do maybe like a reflective note on the impact and relevance.
We talk about barriers, and we talk about lack of diversity and inclusion, and we talk about perceptions, and we talk about constraint within the education system and investment in it. And they are real big problems, as are the massive issues of our time. I think where we are at the moment, it's absolutely a team effort, and that is what's made us stronger, is real collaborative working with the user, the client, the children at the centre of that, and as collaborators and loud voices in our ears, as well as practical hands-on co-conspirators, I'd say. That has been the real game changer. So we know there are all these issues. We've thought very carefully. And it's a project that precedes me. It's sort of 5 to 8 years in the making, Young V&A. What is the V&A going to do about it? What can we contribute? And I think a radical rethink of how we present collections to children and young people has been one thing. I think understanding it is a child's right to access great art and design as part of their cultural entitlement has been another. So our galleries are free, and I'm really excited about the step change that makes. And then with this open resource that is free and accessible for a school group to come and visit, or for a family to come to. And that bridge, that new social space, the physical building opens up a social forum, a safe space, a space to be creative. And that's, I guess, what I've strived for in all of my work. But I'm really just very honoured and privileged to have worked collaboratively with an incredible cross-disciplinary team at Young V&A. Everybody's just worked their socks off to create what we hope everyone will love, but will really make a step change in bringing grown-ups and children together to think about the power of creativity and its importance both in addressing the issues of our time, but also in helping to prepare and support children as our ever-changing world gets more and more complex as well. So that's what I've always hoped to do, and that's what we're hoping that we're doing at Young V&A.
I think sounds amazing. I mean, it's really, really inspiring. And is there a question I should have asked you, or just which I haven't asked you?
Let's talk context. Yeah. So a bit of history to start with. So I didn't know this till very recently, which is quite embarrassing. But the building that Young V&A will occupy in Bethnal Green in East London has been there in that place for 150 years. And throughout that century and a half, it has always been run by the V&A. And it's held all sorts of different collections. And it was East London's first public museum. And it came out of an incredible bit of engineering innovation through the Great Exhibition in the mid-1800s. It was the first building that the V&A occupied in West London. And when they outgrew it and started building more fancy buildings, they dismantled it, horse and carted it over to East London and founded the first public museum in East London. So the V&A has always run that building, and it's always changed for the needs of its time. East London is still a cool place. So we're based in Tower Hamlets. It is the place in the UK with the highest level of child poverty still, if you look at recent census data, still the highest level of child poverty in the country. And it's like, how can that be when we also know it's got a heritage and a future of just incredible, vibrant, creative innovation as well. Just think from the Huguenots right through to, the tech companies and the small businesses that are starting up around the edges of the Olympic Park, on the edges of Victoria Park. It's an incredibly vibrant area that's always had its own character, has always been very interested in protest and individuality, and worked incredibly as strong communities. And we've been there through that 150 years. And so I think that's the other bit of context is, recentering where great art and design is found in our city as well. It's not all about West London. It's not all about the big universities. It's also about putting these in the places where people are living and making sure there's equal access. So we know that the younger you are, the less easy it is to travel around as well. And so our local, hyper-local audiences, we hope will come back and be our super users. We know they did that at the old Museum of Childhood, which was in the building before for just under 50 years. So the geography has really shaped the building. I think placemaking and really understanding the community and what we might contribute to that community now, what the needs are. And again, it's been a huge privilege to have the generosity and the openness of many different cultural collaborators, partners, businesses, organisations in and around Tower Hamlets to think about what we might do together to make sure we're benefiting children in this area where there's great need. It's the highest density of housing and population as well. It's just incredible. So the space itself is really significant just as an offer. And we know in the past, parents just really valued having someone indoors with it, just to run around it. And that's okay. Just like it's all right for us to go and take our laptops and sit in the British Library or in South Bank Centre. We all need that space. We need to be out of our homes with other people, but just doing our own thing sometimes. So that has been part of the architectural design. I haven't even talked to you really about the design of the buildable quality of environment. There have been lots of improvements to make it more sustainable, partly because it's the right thing to do, also partly because it's what children expect now. They are very concerned about climate change and the impact of our built environment on the natural environment. And so we've taken that seriously and thought about both our duty as an institution, but also kind of what's right for that audience. And so improving the sustainability of the building in terms of its energy consumption, but also a lot of work's happened. It's got a wonderful grade 1 listed marble floor, mosaic laid by Victorian women prisoners.
Oh, wow.
Yes. But it's of that, this beautiful, delicate cast ironwork and a roof light that, because of conservation reasons, limiting the light into the building through its most recent iteration, it was all painted over to limit the light came into the building. And actually, through very clever design by wonderful architects, AUC, they've created barriers into the galleries that both signal what the galleries are all about, but also create kind of walls to limit the light that goes in, so we both preserve the environment to look after our wonderful collection items so they're not damaged by the light. But then we have this wonderful natural daylight flooding into this central hall, this social space where we have our cafe and new seating and lots of space to run around or just hang out, and a new stair actually that was co-designed with our base build architects, Matos Ryan, which connects the building. So visually, again, it pulls you through and helps you move around. So we really thought about that child's eye view, the family experience, how you feel in a space makes a difference to how you want to engage in new cultural learning opportunities or even new social opportunities. And so that kind of joy that comes from, we were saying that, we talked about the weather this morning, the feeling of the light on your skin. Children are really affected. Their mood and their attention span is really affected by whether they feel happy in a space or not. And so the work that we've done, particularly in that central hall, but also just making sure that the galleries aren't too hot or too cold, too dark or too light. Because, when you're working with a historic building, there's a lot of adaptation that needs to happen as well. We've done a lot on acoustic treatment as well of the building, because these big Victorian high ceilings and hard surfaces create this kind of swimming pool effect when we have the joyous shriek of children, but it can become a little oppressive. And we've spent a lot of time taking very seriously listening to and understanding particularly our neurodivergent visitors as well, and how a sensory overstimulation is actually very intimidating and create yet another physical barrier to enjoy or engaging with spaces. So acoustic treatment makes it easier on the ears for us grown-ups when we're tired and need a coffee, but also more inclusive for children and young people, and any visitors for that matter, that find lots of noise quite disturbing actually as well. So that's been a lot of, I could go on and on, but just thought I should end on those 2 points, because I think East London, as our hyper-local audience, we're still a national museum. We have an international relationship because we're the V&A, that actually I guess we're a wheel within a wheel within wheel. We do all three: hyper-local, national and international. And that's another very special thing about being able to work directly with children, but then sharing our learning and thinking about our practice in the wider stage. That we'll be very open and admit that we're still learning as we do something none of us have really done quite in this format before. And it's based on lots of great evidence, but the proof of the pudding is always in the eating. So we open on the 1st of July. And we look forward to warmly welcoming you to come and play at the museum. And we have a lovely festival that will animate all of our spaces on the 8th and 9th of July to kickstart with summer holidays as well. It's been so much fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to my guests today, to all the listeners, and please subscribe to Architecture for Kids podcast and leave your rating and a review. Recommend us to your friends and family. And to find out more about it, visit our websites: antoniocaplan-portfolio.co.uk, buildingcentre.co.uk, thorntoneducationtrust.org, cardiff.ac.uk, and follow us on Instagram, Arch4Kids CIC, Twitter, @Kaplan, LinkedIn, @Kaplan, CAPELAO. And please join me again next week for another episode of Architecture for Kids podcast, brought to you in collaboration with the Built Environment Trust, the Thornton Education Trust, and the Welsh School of Architecture, Cardiff University.